Δημοσίευμα το New York Times έφερε στο φως ένα μυστικό πρόγραμμα του αμερικανικού Πενταγώνου, το οποίο έχει ως αντικείμενο τη διερεύνηση του φαινομένου των UFO.
Newly released video captured by U.S. Navy pilots offers an inside look at a secretive government program that investigated unidentified flying objects. The Defense Department says it ended the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program in 2012 over funding issues. But a Pentagon spokeswoman said, quote, "The DoD takes seriously all threats and takes action whenever credible information is developed." Tony DeCopel shows us 2 UFO encounters captured on camera. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. Wait till you see this video. That little-known Pentagon program had a budget of about $22 million, according to the civilian intelligence officer who used to run it. Most of the sightings looked at were by U.S. military personnel who have been reporting UFO sightings for decades.
So look at that thing. It's rotated.
This is one of the incidents the Pentagon's secretive group of UFO hunters investigated.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
This object appeared off the California coast in 2004 and baffled 2 Navy pilots.
It's not a drone. It's not something that we can easily say, oh, that's an airplane.
Luis Elizondo ran the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program at the Defense Department. He believes the way that school bus-sized object moved defied the known laws of physics.
What we are looking at is truly beyond next-generation technologies.
Former Nevada Senator Harry Reid championed the UFO program, and some of the funding reportedly went to one of his donors, Robert Bigelow, founder of the military contractor Bigelow Aerospace. The Las Vegas tycoon spoke with 60 Minutes in May.
Do you imagine that in our space travels we will encounter other forms of intelligent life?
You don't have to go anywhere.
You can find it here.
Yeah.
Where exactly?
It's just like right under people's noses. Oh my gosh. Wow.
I'm human. What are you?
Unlike in the movies, most UFOs don't turn out to be alien spacecraft. This green fireball above Buenos Aires in 2015 was likely a meteor, while this strange light over Los Angeles was actually a missile test.
I think this is a national security imperative. We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control.
Elizondo refused to tell us how many cases his former group investigated, saying that information was sensitive. From 1947 to 1969, an Air Force program called Project Blue Book looked into more than 12,000 UFO sightings and about 700 of them remain unidentified.
Interesting how they buried this in the budget under this sort of blurry name, Advanced Aviation Threat Identification
They
Program.
call it black money for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen one, but I believe when I was a little kid, there was a movie where it shows aliens giving you a needle in the back of your neck and it changed your personality. It terrified me for years. Still terrifies me, so I believe in that.
I do too.
I know. Stranger things have happened.
Stranger things.
Yeah.
Big smile from Tony DeCopo this morning. Thank you, Tony.
A newly revealed secret Pentagon UFO program has spent millions of dollars to look into UFO sightings. RT's Trinity Chavez explains.
For the first time, the Pentagon is admitting to running a secret UFO investigation for years. But the fact the department thought that these unidentified flying objects were worth millions of dollars in investigations has many questioning if UFOs really do exist. Over the weekend, the Pentagon released this video published by both the New York Times and the Washington Post detailing the once secret government program that investigated sightings of what they called, quote, anomalous aerial vehicles.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
This is just one of the many alleged sightings investigated by the secret $22 million department in the Pentagon. In the past, the Defense Department has never before acknowledged the program.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
But now, for the first time, the DoD is admitting the program did exist, telling RT that, quote, the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program was ended in the 2012 timeframe. It was determined that there were other higher priority issues that merited funding, and it was in the best interest of the DoD to make a change. Although the Pentagon has ended funding and says that there are no plans to reinstate the program, the New York Times reports that the program remains in existence and continues to investigate incidents reported by airmen and soldiers. Reporting in New York, Trinity Chavez, RT.
The government has spent millions of dollars investigating UFOs like this one right there. It was spotted by Navy pilots. And Nick Watt has a closer look at the program.
Just one of many alleged sightings investigated by the secret $22 million UFO unit run from the Pentagon.
Look at that thing. It's rotated.
A real-life X-Files.
I've seen things that I cannot deny.
Here's another, what pilots describe as a 40-foot-long tic-tac, 100 miles off the California coast.
I have never seen anything in my life that had the performance, the acceleration. Keep in mind, this thing had no wings.
Commander David Fravor was piloting an FA-18 on a training mission that day in 2004.
And it's moving around left, right, forward, back. The radar immediately starts getting jammed. All of a sudden, it takes off.
No aircraft that we know of can fly at those speeds, maneuver like that, and looks like that.
I think it was not from this world. I just know it was really impressive, really fast, and I would like to fly it.
The Pentagon telling ABC News the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program ended in the 2012 timeframe. It was determined there were other higher priority issues that merited funding.
So we always joke, maybe it was trying to communicate with something under the water. You know, I've seen Star Trek with the whales. I don't know if it was alien life, but I will say that in an infinite universe with multiple galaxies that we know of, that if we're the only planet with life, it's a pretty lonely universe.
Now, there are often rational explanations, but Commander Fravor hasn't heard one yet for his sighting. And George and Paula, according to sources quoted in the New York Times, the military still listens to soldiers and sailors and airmen, still investigates what might.
Maybe our favorite story of the day, the one that we mentioned at the top of the show. Cue the music. What looks to be a case of real-life X-Files, ladies and gentlemen.
We're learning this morning about a Pentagon program that spent millions of dollars to look into UFO sightings, and ESPN's Tony Reale is so excited he's fidgeting in his seat.
Yeah, you bring in the sports guy for this. You know, I'm all over this story. I told you, not just the X-Files, the XYZ files. That's what you get with me. They're unidentified, they're flying, and they're objects. And the fact that a secret department in the Pentagon thought they were worth millions of dollars of investigation has many wondering if the truth is out there.
Dun, dun, dun.
My gosh.
An unidentified flying object.
Look at that thing, dude.
Spotted by 2 Navy fighter pilots flying high above the clouds.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
These newly released videos from the Department of Defense, published by the New York Times and Washington Post, part of a once secret government program to investigate sightings of so-called anomalous aerial vehicles in the skies. It sounds like a plot out of the X-Files.
The truth is out there.
Or something the Men in Black would zap from your memory.
Flash of light you saw in the sky was not a UFO.
But according to reports in the Washington Post and New York Times, the Department of Defense has spent at least $22 million since 2007 looking into UFO sightings. Former Nevada Senator Harry Reid, who helped secure the funding for the program, telling the New York Times, "I think it's one of the good things I did in my congressional service. I've done something that no one has done before." And now the Pentagon officially acknowledging its Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program for the first time. Telling ABC News they ended the program in 2012 in favor of other higher priority issues that merited funding, but that the DoD takes seriously all threats and potential threats to our people, our assets, and our mission, and takes action whenever credible information is developed. The Pentagon ended funding, but the New York Times reports the program remains in existence and has continued to investigate episodes brought to them by service members, which leads me to ask this question. And, you know, there's no film and cameras anymore, so don't worry about anybody watching. Do you believe in UFOs, Dan?
I mean, there are definitely unidentified flying objects. Whether there are aliens inside them, I don't know.
Quite astute. Thank you. Paula?
I believe that there are other beings, but I'm not sure that I believe in aliens.
Ron?
Wait, you think there's other beings, but you don't
Is it
believe in aliens?
I think she said beings, actually.
Beings.
Yeah.
No, but not necessarily aliens, but maybe microscopic organisms and that sort of thing. But I'm not sure about an alien.
I just want to know more at this point.
That's what I want to know, too.
I
This
think
is the
there's a
DoD
morning
we're talking about.
going on in a galaxy far
There are
away.
aliens, and we'll have them on the set next weekend.
Let me just say, if there are aliens,
promise.
we'll lead the show with that.
Yes.
The Pentagon has been keeping track, or trying to, of the type of aircraft that don't take off and land from conventional airports. We're talking about unidentified flying objects, UFOs. You can laugh about it if you want, but it's very seriously. Correspondent Garrett Tenney is here with more on this program.
We may not know if aliens exist, but it turns out our government had a special team of UFO hunters that was trying to find out. The Pentagon now confirms the existence of a secretive UFO program tasked with investigating reports of unidentified flying objects. The Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program was created in 2007 at the urging of then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. And over the next 5 years, the program received more than $20 million for its work, which included analyzing a variety of aeronautic threats ranging from what could be our adversaries' next-generation aircraft to reports from military pilots of encounters with unknown objects like this one in 2004 that appear to defy the laws of physics.
Look at that thing, dude. Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Now, the Pentagon tells us the program ended in 2012 when officials determined there were other higher priority issues. But the program's former director, who resigned in October, says it was only the funding that ended and that over the last 5 years, the program has continued investigating incidents alongside their new responsibilities. This weekend, Harry Reid said he has no regrets about the program he championed, tweeting in part, "This is about science and national security. If America doesn't take the lead in answering these questions, others will. And this isn't the first time the Pentagon's investigated UFOs. Between 1947 and 1969, the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book investigated more than 12,000 UFO sightings, and while most of those ended up having reasonable explanations, 700 sightings remain unexplained. Brett?
Cue the X-Files music. Garrett, thank you.
Reports of a secret government-funded program focused on UFOs. This question, are we alone? It's a question a secret Pentagon program was investigating. Details on the multi-million-dollar operation focused on UFOs.
The Air Force formed Project Blue Book for three basic purposes. First, to determine that there was no threat to our national security. Second, to preclude technological surprise. And third, and probably most important, to prove the existence of UFOs.
That was a clip from the late 1970s TV show Project Blue Book, based on an Air Force program that investigated UFO sightings. Project Blue Book ended in 1969. 4 decades later, we're learning about another government program that remained largely a secret. According to the New York Times, the program produced documents that described sightings of aircraft that seemed to move at very high velocities with no visible signs of propulsion, or that hovered with no apparent means of lift. Joining me now is Leslie Kean, one of the co-writers of that New York Times article and author of UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Leslie, we appreciate you being here to talk to us about this. What more can you tell us about this Pentagon program? What did it find?
Well, the program has been in operation since 2007, and it's been secret until now. And it studied about 10 to 12 different incidences a year that involved military aircraft encountering these objects that can't be explained. And basically, they characterize them as the way you did. Mm-hmm. They're objects that they can't explain how they move incredibly fast. They'll hover and take a sudden right-angle turn, incredible velocities that we could never withstand if any living creature was in them. So they observe behaviors that seem to be technology that we don't have on this planet. I mean, that's what we're stuck with.
And so there was a pretty sizable budget for this program. What did they find?
Well, I mean, basically what they did with that budget is a lot of different research to try to document what was going on, to try to understand the physics behind how the objects, move around, mm-hmm. and then to just keep records of what they were observing. But they haven't been able to find what they are, where they're from, or anything like that. It's a process of investigating incidences and then trying to collect as much data as you can.
So who was behind securing the funding for the Pentagon to be able to do this sort of work? And I guess what was the logic behind it? What were they hoping to accomplish with this?
Well, I mean, Senator Harry Reid was behind the funding. He with a couple of colleagues, Senator Inouye and Senator Stevens, in 2007, 2009, he was able to get funding appropriated for the program, and it ended up being about $22 million, and they had contractors that helped do the research.
But this was kept a secret. I mean, nobody knew about this.
It was kept a secret, and nobody even knew that the program existed. And in fact, lots of people in the Pentagon don't even know it exists. So it's barely been kept quiet because the information is very, very sensitive. And they felt that there's also other countries that might be working on the same thing. So there's a sense of wanting to keep this information to ourselves. But a lot of people believe that it should be made public, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
Now, there are a lot of people out there who say that this might be a waste of taxpayer dollars to be searching for UFOs and investigating aliens and that sort of thing. What have people said, people you've talked to, what have they said about that?
Everybody has different opinions, and it's not about investigating aliens. It's just about investigating a documented phenomenon that has been observed, that has been seen on videos, and trying to figure out what it is. That's basically what it is. Nobody's claiming that they're aliens or that they're extraterrestrials. So here we're dealing with something that could be potential threat because it's a technological craft that we don't understand, and we don't know where it comes from and how it does what it does. That's the reason to study it.
All right, it's an interesting read. I read your article, and it sort of raises some questions and answers a few others, and then raises some more. But
it raises a lot of questions, and there's a lot we don't know. That's the whole point.
Indeed.
So.
All right. Leslie Kean, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Welcome back, everybody. Our final story today, it's a little out there, and I do mean out there. The New York Times breaking the news that the Pentagon has been secretly researching the possible existence of UFOs. Apparently, the Department of Defense launched the program in cooperation with former Senator Harry Reid in 2007, and it spent $22 million each year searching for unidentified flying objects until the program was shuttered back in 2012. Joining us now to talk more about this, one of the authors of yesterday's fascinating New York Times article, journalist Ralph Blumenthal. Ralph, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Talk to me about the research that went into this article.
Okay, first of all, it was not $22 million a year. It was $22 million total, which is really a drop in the bucket of the Pentagon budget. But it went for research into these objects, and no one knows what they are to this day, that have been seen by Navy planes. They've engaged with them. They've been reported by witnesses. But beyond that, we really don't know much. And the research went into trying to identify their strange means of propulsion, their phenomenal aerodynamics, which represent nothing on the face of this earth by any country. And the research, even though the program was officially ran out of money in 2012, it really has continued, we found out.
So what's been going on, and why have they not publicized the fact that it has continued?
Well, it's a controversial program. A lot of people, there's a ridicule factor. A lot of people are afraid of, the people would make fun of the government spending this money, as has already happened in other media.
But there's also a lot of fascination.
There is fascination. This is probably the most watched and looked at story the New York Times has run in a long time, because people are fascinated by the subject.
Yeah, so what are they finding? Have they found anything so far?
Well, they have confirmed, in effect, for the first time, that these things exist according to what the program said, that they have established a kind of reality to these objects that didn't exist before, that the government was standing behind, or at least this unit of the Pentagon. They have, as we reported in the paper, some material from these objects that is being studied so that scientists can try to figure out what accounts for their amazing properties, this technology of these objects, whatever they are. So they have made some progress.
What type of material?
They don't know. They're studying it, but it's some kind of compound that they don't recognize.
So a lot of questions still. Not a lot of answers.
More questions than answers.
As we always have with UFOs.
Progress.
Yeah, but it really is fascinating stuff. Despite the fact that there is ridicule that comes along with
it'll take some attention away from the day-to-day.
Yeah,
put it that way.
I'd like a little respite, wouldn't you?
We could use it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about UFOs a little bit more these days, I gotta say.
It's a fascinating subject.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, Ralph Blumenthal, I wish I had more time with you, but we have run out of time.
Out front now, the former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November, Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think it's probably been a little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting, anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological, hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly in defying the laws of aerodynamics. So people are talking.
Think, I mean, I know, but do you believe, when you get that Navy pilot saying what he said, do you think that that was, a UFO? To obviously, I don't have any other word to use, or that, or something else?
Sure, that's a great question. Keeping in mind, it's not just the pilot's testimony on an observation. Sure, when someone comes to you who's in charge of a multi-million-dollar weapon platform, who maintains a top secret security clearance, who is paid and trusted by this country to go fight wars and to fly over cities with live munitions. And by the way, they're trained observers with millions of dollars invested in their training.
Yep.
I would submit to you it's pretty compelling. But on top of that, it's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar returns. It's also people like radar operators and air traffic controllers. So I think the discussion should be maybe a little bit broader than that. I think people are focusing just on 2 videos coming from a set of F-18s when really it's a lot more than that.
So you know, recently, I guess it was in October, astronomers spotted what they say could be the first interstellar asteroid. You see it there, kind of that strange shape from beyond the solar system. What do you see when you look at that?
Well, you know, Ms. Burnett, I have to admit to you, when I ran this program, I was fundamentally looking at, my colleagues looking at 2 things.
Yeah.
What is it and how does it work? We have deliberately stayed away from going down the rabbit hole of who's behind the wheel and what are their intentions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a lot of feelings towards that and are very emotional about that. And what I wanted to do was to allow the data to speak for itself and then use that data to inform leadership, senior DoD leadership, about the potential threat that these type of technologies pose to national security, especially over any type of controlled airspace that we might have. So I'm not trying to be evasive in any way or vague with your answer, but
yeah. Well,
I think there's a lot of possibilities.
Look, and I know you think it's important. I know you think that the government didn't take the threat seriously enough. So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
Well, speaking of space mysteries, the one you're about to see now is a whole different ballgame. Watch.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
So what you're seeing, it's not a scene from a sci-fi movie. This is actual footage released by the Pentagon, a seemingly genuine close encounter. And here's more of that stunned reaction from the Navy pilots. Well, not just one UFO, but an entire fleet of unidentified flying objects sighted off the coast of San Diego in 2004 and kept secret until now.
Former Nevada Senator Harry Reid says he's proud to have played a part in authorizing a secret Pentagon study of UFOs, a study that helped bring videos like this to light. Thanks for joining us here tonight at 6 o'clock. I'm Denise Valdez.
And I'm John Langler. Christiane has the night off. The existence of this UFO study was first reported by the I-Team back in October. That's when a high-ranking intelligence officer in charge of the program quit to take a job with a private company.
Over the weekend, news of Reid's role in the study surfaced in news reports. The senator gave his only on-camera interview to George Knapp. George?
Well, we can say for sure that Harry Reid's interest in UFOs dates back at least to 1989, because that's when my own conversation on that subject began. In the years since, he has quietly collected more information, met with scientists, intelligence officials, and other experts, and finally helped authorize a study that was carried out by a company created by a Las Vegas billionaire. Since the story broke on Saturday, Reid has been bombarded with media requests, but he gave his only on-camera interview to the I-Team.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
The release this weekend of videos recorded by military pilots is unusual because officially the U.S. government stopped collecting information about UFOs in 1969 when the Air Force canceled Project Blue Book. But in the decades since, pilots and others continued to encounter technology that is beyond anything known on Earth.
If China, Russia, Japan, other countries are doing this, and we're not, something's wrong. He said, because if the technology we have, the way these things are described and the way people see them, if this movement took place in anything we have now available to us, it would kill everybody. They couldn't withstand those G-forces. Something's sitting there and boom, down it goes.
Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid's interest in UFOs extends back to the 1980s. It was rekindled in the 90s when Reid spoke to Senator and former astronaut John Glenn about unknown aerial objects. Reid eventually met in a secure room in the U.S. Capitol to ask Senators Daniel Inouye and Ted Stevens if they would authorize funds for a quiet but serious study of UFOs. Both agreed.
Are you glad the story's out?
Yeah, I'm very glad. Because now we have scientific evidence.
Reid says he's proud to have had a hand in kickstarting the Pentagon study, and contrary to some media reports, the information collected was impressive, he says.
For nearly the last decade, I ran a sensitive aerospace threat identification program focusing on unidentified aerial technologies. It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
Until 3 months ago, Luis Elizondo worked directly for the Secretary of Defense and was the Pentagon's point man for collection of data about mysterious encounters. When he announced in October he'd been in charge of a 10-year UFO study, the news was largely ignored by mainstream media. Now it has blossomed into a huge story, in part because Reid acknowledges his own role in getting the funds approved.
Even though this was a secure program, we wanted to make sure that people couldn't complain that it was some sweetheart deal. No, put out to bid.
The contract was posted for months. The winning bid came from Las Vegas space entrepreneur Robert Bigelow, a billionaire who has funded his own UFO studies for years. Bigelow built secure facilities inside his aerospace company. At its peak, the study had 46 scientists working at the Nevada facility, writing reports and analyzing data that came in from the military. Rapid response teams were dispatched to the scene of UFO events. Over the 5 years, the project cost a total of $22 million. It wasn't a moneymaker for Bigelow.
But I'm sure one reason it helped is he gave the best cost because he was willing to build the infrastructure. He did everything on his own because he liked the subject.
In some news stories about the UFO study, anonymous staffers say Reid stopped supporting the study because it produced no solid information.
Well, of course, Reid didn't kill the program. I wish it were still going.
So why did the study end? Reid and others involved in the project say one factor is that intelligence officials were petrified that someone would find out about it and it would end up on the front page of a newspaper. That cat is definitely out of the bag. And there were other officials who had religious objections. We'll have more exclusive content tomorrow, including specifics on what was learned during this study and which UFO incidents were the most unusual. And if you want to see those Pentagon UFO videos again, we're posting the link on our website.
Now for something rather different. The U.S. Defense Department has acknowledged running a secret multi-million-dollar program to investigate unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. The New York Times says the program was launched 10 years ago at the request of a former and senior Democratic Senator Harry Reid. The Pentagon has confirmed that the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program ended in 2012. But is it continuing under another guise within the vast universe of the U.S. defense establishment? Well, we can speak now to Nick Pope, former UFO investigator for the British Ministry of Defence. He's on webcam from California. Nick, thanks for joining us on BBC World News. Does this have the ring of truth to you?
Yes, absolutely. This program definitely took place. In one sense, it's not surprising that the US government was investigating UFOs. The real story, I think, is the fact that they had denied it so vehemently for so many years.
It seems that a lot of the work took place within a private company, this company that was run by billionaire Robert Bigelow, who's still very involved in space.
Yes, that's a classic tool within the intelligence community to make things like congressional scrutiny and Freedom of Information Act requests more difficult. And effectively, it takes it outside of the scope of freedom of information altogether. And indeed, we did a similar thing in the Ministry of Defense with a classified intelligence study that we did on the UFO mystery. So again, that part of it I can well understand.
If they'd found anything, would they tell us?
No, almost certainly not. This thing was highly classified, very deeply compartmentalized, and one of the reasons why there may have been all these denials that the US government was looking at this phenomenon at all was that most of the rest of the government probably didn't know. I mean, that's always the way with these highly classified projects.
What's your view? Is there any kind of smoking gun here? I mean, it all seems rather fantastical, but you know, it's possible.
Yes, indeed. I mean, now, the vast majority of these things, the sightings that they'll have looked at, will turn out to be misidentifications of things like drones and atmospheric weather phenomena. But, you know, the skeptics have to be right every day. The believers only have to be right once. And clearly the government was doing, I think, a proper thing, taking a look at these things going on in its airspace. And there are some fascinating gun camera footage beginning to emerge as a result of this story, where jet aircraft have chased these things, whatever they are.
Now, the man whom the New York Times names as running this program, Luis Elizondo, says to the New York Times that the effort continued unofficially and he had a successor. Do you think it's likely that investigations like this do still go on?
Yes, absolutely. Even though the funding plug seems to have been pulled, all the things that governments need to investigate UFOs, the radar systems, the imagery analysis, expertise and computer processing power, all that exists anyway as part of the wider defense network. So you can actually, if you kind of massage the figures and say that there's no additional cost to this because the resources are already there, you can continue the program on a sort of quasi-official basis. And that, I'm sure, is what's happening.
Nick Pope, former investigator for the Ministry of Defence. Fascinating stuff, and thank you for speaking to us.
UFOs have been the stuff of conspiracy theorists for decades, often mocked for talking about it, but maybe they shouldn't be mocked. Commander David Fravor spent 18 years as a naval aviator, a pilot. In 2004, he had an unforgettable encounter with an aircraft he said was defying the laws of physics. Former Commander Fravor joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on tonight. Tell us what you saw.
Well, we had launched on a routine training mission. When we joined up, we were told that the event was going to be canceled. and then we have real-world tasking, and we were sent out to the west. Now, take in mind that this has taken place about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, between San Diego and Ensenada, Mexico, on a clear, perfect day, blue waters. We get out to the spot where they tell us it's at. We start looking around, and both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. So as we drive around in a clockwise flow, we get to about the 9 o'clock position, and I said, well, I'm going to go down and check it out, and the other jet is going to stay high. So as we go down, when we get to the 12 o'clock position, it starts to mirror us. So it's in a clockwise flow, and it's on the opposite side of the circle from us. And we continue this. It's in a climb, we're in a descent, we're getting a great look at it. This whole thing takes about probably up to 5 minutes from the time we show up. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm going to go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me. And I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today. Not at all.
Even now, even 13 years later, is there anything that you know of capable of this kind of behavior?
No, there's nothing I know of. I mean, when we saw the video with the IR, it has no exhaust, no discernible things of anything form of propulsion. And this thing came from a dead hover over the water, just kind of moving around, to a climb up to about 12,000 feet to rapidly accelerating away in a climb, and in less than 2 seconds it was gone. And you figure you're talking 50 miles of visibility, and you can easily see an object that size easily out to 10 miles, and it just disappeared in seconds.
What would be the effects on a human pilot of the G-forces involved in that altitude change?
Well, the altitude wouldn't be bad. It would be the acceleration of the object.
That's right.
Honestly, I wanted to fly it.
Yeah,
but, I bet. Talking to some physicists, they don't think the human body could handle that kind of force with that acceleration.
It doesn't sound like the human body could. So bottom line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
When presumably you expressed that belief to your superiors, what did they say?
Actually, we caught a lot of grief getting back to the boat, and it got passed off as an event that no one could explain. Now, keep in mind, they had been tracking these for 2 weeks prior to us seeing it, and this was the first time that manned airplanes had been airborne when the objects appeared.
This feels like a really big story to me. It's not exactly clear why Vladimir Putin's more interesting than this. I think this seems like a big deal. And Commander, I appreciate your taking the time to talk to us about it. You seem sober and believable, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Tucker.
Thanks.
I'm a political activist, not a researcher, and so I view everything from both a political and a much bigger picture perspective. There's so many things happening in this field, so much history, that if you focus on one part of it, it's very hard to really get a sense of what's going on. So my comments are going to come from that larger picture. First and foremost, this is without question a major It's clearly been in the works for some time. So I certainly agree with Grant on that. And Tom DeLonge right now is the quarterback on the field with the ball, as far as the disclosure process is concerned. But as it comes out, there's a couple things I think people need to keep in mind if they want to try to understand it, as opposed to just react to it. First of all, almost everything that comes from the military intelligence complex on this issue is a lie or not true. And lie is a little tough a word because it is national security based, and from their perspective, any lie or prevarication or misdirection in service to national security is excusable and acceptable, and I understand that. But when it comes to the Pentagon and the CIA, nothing is what it seems. So as I watch this unfold, there's so many things about it which are so clearly ridiculous and or anomalous in a way that it's a little frustrating, and yet I understand it and I accept it. First of all, the media and a lot of people are treating this like this is the first time this has happened. It's not. We've been going round and round with these kinds of things turning up from time to time for 70 years. Secondly, the people that are involved are very high level, and it's not likely that any of them are going to get involved in something like this unless there's something really big at the end of it. The people that recently left the service of the Pentagon, like Elizondo or the CIA, when you have careers in those areas, when you leave, you have a huge list of options that you can pursue. Very lucrative contract, consulting, company deals, you name it. You can have a very good life. And yet they've chosen to sign up with a fledgling public service company, which is going to clearly raise some money, but it's not an easy road. Plus, it's tough. I mean, they're entering into very publicly the most controversial field in the world right now, and the field that's been under heavy embargo for 70 years. So there's that. And then when you look at some of the things that like Elizondo is talking about and Mellon and Justice, you realize that they're one thing they're not doing is they're not violating any non-disclosure agreements. They're simply not doing that. And that's notable. Also, the release of this footage, Elizondo brought the footage with him when he left the program that he, quote, resigned from. Fine. There's no chance in my view that he stole that footage. If he brought it, it was brought because the Pentagon allowed him to bring it, which means the Pentagon released it. And even though the Pentagon is denying that, they've already been approached several different directions. A number of spokespeople have come out. They're really hedging their bets, but I understand that. This is a release by the Pentagon. So it's the first time ever that the military has released gun camera footage. Another point, people are all excited about this gun camera footage and this particular event, particularly the Nimitz event, which they clearly consider to be a perfect incident to bring forward. The U.S. government has got reams of gun camera footage. Does anyone think that that is like a rare thing that, wow, they set up a plane to intercept a bogey? They've been doing that for 70 years. I can't imagine how many cans full of gun camera footage they have. So one has been released, finally, 70 years after Roswell. But they have much more than that. Okay, fine. So this just gives you a sense of how kind of awkward this is. Also, you're listening to the various statements by these individuals who were inside and pretty well connected, people who had clearances, very high-level clearances, and they're making careful statements, couch statements, avoiding the extraterrestrial statement, dancing around it, fine. The government has had in its possession crash vehicles since the 40s and early 50s. they had bodies from Roswell. Roswell was a real event, right? And so this idea that they're doing research because they want to assess the threat implications of this phenomena, they've been assessing the threat implications for 70 years, and there really hasn't been any serious indication of threat against the United States. But they have to cast it under the threat name, because that's the way you do it. I mean, that's the safe way. Right? They're not studying extraterrestrial intelligence. They're just checking out the national security threat implications. All of this is dancing around the issue. All of this is intended to sort of keep us in a certain place because, and this is the final point I'll make, we've known for some time, and I know Grant knows this as well, that yes, there are a substantial number of people inside the military intelligence complex that think this information should have been out long ago. But there's also a substantial number that think this should be classified forever. And so there's been a tug of war going on. And as time has gone by, those that want to maintain the truth embargo indefinitely are slowly losing their leverage. And so we're seeing this tug of war play out, and it sort of looks like it's finally swinging over toward the, quote, disclosure-minded members. But they still have huge public relations issues and complications, the political implications of what they're doing, because remember, they are not the boss. The president's the boss. So they're operating in a very kind of gray area, but they're being very careful. And so that's the larger picture and perspective on what's happening right now. It's not new, and yet it is new. But without question, it has a level of substance that may, in fact, bring the truth embargo to an end soon. And everyone is getting excited that 2018 is very well the year.
And then when Barack Obama, 2 days before he leaves office, he drops the 12 million files and 12 million pages of files, but you got to remember it's phenomenology files. It's remote viewing and UFO files. It's not one or the other. It's this from this phenomenology desk. And again, I said, people say, well, the president, if the president were to say it's for real, then I would believe. Well, in November of 2015, Barack Obama was giving an interview to GQ magazine, and he's always asked about the story about the Book of Secrets. What's the deal? Do you have the secrets, Mr. President? And Barack Obama says this, quote, you know, everybody always asks me about the Roswell and the UFO stuff. I just want to let you know that that top secret stuff is not as exciting as you think it is. Now, he's just opened it up. The guy, he just admitted there's top secret stuff on Roswell and UFOs, but it's not that exciting. And instead, the guy, as I say, either had a stroke or he fell asleep or whatever, because his next question was, would you like to be a Supreme Court justice? And they dropped the thing, and Obama handed it to him, and they didn't take it.
A rock star turned UFO entrepreneur is finally ready to unveil plans for an ambitious investigation of cutting-edge phenomena, and this time he's bringing help.
We are talking about musician Tom DeLonge first revealed his long-term plans for the I-Team. That was nearly 2 years ago. Critics didn't believe his claims of having made contact with high-ranking military officials, but DeLonge is now naming names. George Knapp is here with an update on his story.
Seems like everybody's mad at Tom DeLonge. A lot of his fans from his days with Blink-182 are still mad at him for turning his attention to UFOs. Others are mad at him for delaying his announcement originally planned for this summer. Tomorrow morning, the rock star will make good on his promises to reveal the names of government insiders who will be part of a team to boldly go where few have gone before.
These are real people, though, in real positions.
These are real people in real positions dealing with real threats.
When rock star Tom DeLonge first told the I-Team 18 months ago that he'd connected with high-ranking military and intelligence officials and got them to open up about UFOs, the public groaned. Why would national security authorities spend any time speaking to a punk rocker, especially about intrusions by unknown aircraft? DeLonge's many critics said he was making it up or being fed disinformation. Then WikiLeaks released hundreds of pages of emails from presidential advisor John Podesta's account, and among them were messages from Tom DeLonge identifying top generals and others who were advising him about UFOs. DeLonge had been telling the truth.
There are groups and high-level groups within the DOD and national security divisions of our country. Not only do I know that they know it's real, you know, I'm starting to get a clear picture of why it's kept secret.
To the chagrin of his music fans, DeLonge changed the course of his professional life, founded a company called To the Stars to house his various projects, and went silent as he worked to rebuild the network sidelined by the WikiLeaks disclosure. Now, after hitting some snags, he's ready to unveil his project, a public benefit corporation, To the Stars Academy. One element will be entertainment, movies and books consistent with the theme of cutting-edge science. But the bigger story will be the partners who will step forward. Noted physicist Dr. Hal Puthoff, who's worked for CIA and NSA as well as private think tanks studying exotic propulsion technologies. Chris Mellon, who served in the Office of the Secretary of Defense in 2 administrations. Steve Justice, head of advanced systems for Lockheed's Skunk Works, whose previous projects were developed in secrecy at Nevada's Area 51 military base. Justice will reportedly oversee the development of this exotic craft, inspired by and a rival to the technology displayed in some UFO encounters. And Luis Elizondo, who until a week ago worked for the Secretary of Defense in charge of identifying unknown aerial threats, a job the public didn't know existed until now. DeLonge's webpage outlines some of what the public corporation hopes to do, and a big part of that will be the ongoing investigation of cutting-edge phenomena, subjects that for decades have been studied in secrecy by small groups within the government.
And it's hard to tell somebody who doesn't want to take the topic seriously that there really are people in government and around government and within the military-industrial complex that know it's real.
Absolutely. Not only is there a level of people that know that this is true, it is the grand chess game.
Several of the people mentioned in our story will speak publicly tomorrow about UFOs and other exotic pursuits, and we're told there is a pretty dramatic UFO encounter involving the U.S. military that will be revealed and documented for the first time. On our website is a link to a newspaper story about the pending announcement and information about the Academy and how to watch the event itself. One of the guys on the team is named Jim Semivan. He spent 30 years with the CIA, and his job before he left government was to give the morning intelligence briefing to the President of the U.S. So it's a heavyweight group of people.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Tom DeLong, and who are you?
I'm AJ Hartley.
Why don't we lay some groundwork of who you are, what you do full-time besides write 50 books a year?
Not 50, but a lot. It seems like it's been a lot, yeah. My day job, supposedly, is I am the Russell Robinson Distinguished Professor of Shakespeare Studies at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte.
I think we'll start with some questions. So the first one I got here is from Amanda, and I don't know who Amanda is, but thank you for being here. She has a question that says, and this is to you, AJ, whilst carrying out your research for the Secret Machine book, was there any information that you stumbled on or received that shocked you?
The two things I think that that really stood out were the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident with we were talking about before, with the nuclear missile readiness system shutting down during some kind of encounter, which is quite well documented, and and the Belgian triangle wave, which is also quite well documented from the 80s. 20 years or so after the Air Force Base incident. And I think part of what I found most shocking, compelling about those stories is how well, how extensively they were documented, how many accounts there were of things happening that people couldn't explain, and how many of those documents were part of an official record.
The first thing that shocked me was another piece of information that we were told to put in, was the physics of controlling space-time. I knew that we could counter-rotate magnets, which creates, a twisting of time and space, or this. I knew that we can electrically charge our aircraft. The flying wing bomber does that. And when you do that, it moves the air out of the way and you could fly a lot faster and longer and lighter. But I never knew that we can completely engineer space-time, which is true anti-gravity, which is, I just thought that was Star Trek shit. And apparently it's not. So there's a bit about in the book of our craft having that ability that that didn't come from us.
Right,
So,
right.
Hal Puthoff, I'm a physicist. I'm also director of the Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin. And basically we do forefront research on energy and propulsion for spaceflight. Well, as a physicist, I've always, in fact, starting as a kid, I've always been interested in the actual forefront of physics. And so I've been always involved in looking at ideas that were, right at the edge. And along the way, I ended up getting interested in space flight, followed the space program in great detail. My ex-CIA contract monitor, Kit Green, told me about Tom and what he was doing, and said he thought I should meet him because Tom was really exploring new areas right at the edge of research, and that since that was my interest level, it would make a good combination.
Have you ever had the desire to look outward, to the edge of what is known and unknown? We have the chance to do something revolutionary, something that I think has never been attempted before. What if I told you I found a group of like-minded people who held senior positions in the US government, from the CIA to the Department of Defense to the most advanced aerospace engineering groups within our national security establishment. People who have life skills in collecting and decoding elusive information. And they all wanted to do something ambitious, something that could help change the conversation about who we are through an unparalleled search for answers that can propel humanity forward. Today we are presenting you with To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, a public benefit corporation, the first transparent partnership of its kind between the fields of aerospace engineering, science, and cinematic entertainment, a collaboration with global citizens to explore the outer edges of conventional thinking, targeting the mysteries of the universe and using them to help unify mankind.
Humanity is clustered around a campfire, surrounded by the shadows of an infinite and cold universe. Tom and the others involved with this enterprise want to take torches, stick them in the fire, go on adventures into those shadows to explore those boundary areas and reveal what's there.
What if scientists were given resources to investigate the boundaries of traditional theory? We could finally pull together a unified study from religious scholars, archaeologists, quantum theorists, physicists, and even the most advanced aerospace engineers on the planet.
The truth of the matter is, we now know in our physics, which has been advancing, that something like warp drive is not out of the question.
To the Stars represents an opportunity to reach beyond the normal boundaries of aerospace, to create products that you can call them revolutionary, and it's too mild of a word.
I'm very excited about this. I think it's an opportunity for us to take certain topics, whether that's unidentified aerial phenomena or ESP or telepathy, and really get to the bottom of it.
Starting as a kid, I've always been interested in the actual forefront of physics, right at the edge. These days, standard mainstream physics is really outstripping science fiction.
I was in charge of the advanced aerospace threat that deals with highly sophisticated, unidentified phenomena. In the last 10 years, we've come a long way in our understanding of our place here in this universe. There are physics that we don't quite yet understand. Doesn't mean that they're not real, it just simply means that we don't have the capacity yet to understand those physics.
I think we're all frustrated by the fact that our government and conventional science neglects some of the most interesting and provocative and potentially important issues out there.
One of the things that we must do is challenge ourselves to stand in the future and look back to the present. That's the key to breakthroughs. That's the key to changing life as we know it.
I think it's in our nature to go out and explore and report back what we see. The fact is, we might not necessarily be alone.
These things are real. These things are out there. They've been out there for a long time. They are not the provenance of the government or any government in the world. They belong to us. These are things that happen to people all the time, and these are things that we need to explore. And we need finally to get together to figure out what this is all about.
Using state-of-the-art technology, our own advanced research and development programs, and unique storytelling experiences, our goal is to introduce these unconventional subjects and their potential to affect the world positively through a model that innovates, educates, and entertains, to present a positive and unifying message to all generations in every country and every belief system that the growth of consciousness that we all desire can start here, right now.
And I truly believe now is a time for us to move forward and finally begin to answer some of life's most deepest mysteries.
We can either crawl forward, or we can take that viewpoint and say, okay, let's leap forward. Let's try to get the 25th century science this century.
This is the time that we are inviting you, the public, to help build a paradigm-shifting global movement and to own it with us. Together, we can create a vehicle that pushes us forward, where we can hopefully learn that we are much more special and much more connected to each other than we could ever imagine. We are To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, a public benefit corporation.
But now you're beginning to understand that extraterrestrial contact is really extra-dimensional contact as well. It's extra consciousness contact.
And so, what I'm concluding with now is a statement that we are on the threshold of potentially some of the most amazing releases of knowledge in the entire recorded history of humanity. This type of a disclosure is as significant as the advent of someone like Jesus coming on earth if he actually did, in fact, do the things that the Bible says that he did. It's as significant as what happened to Muhammad, if you believe what's in the Quran. It's as significant as what happened to Moses, if you believe the Old Testament. It's as significant as what happened to Krishna, if you read the Mahabharata and the Drona Parva and other books like that, the Vedas. It's as significant as the Tibetan ascended masters like Padmasambhava reaching rainbow body and ascending, and 160,000 documented cases of that happening. What is going to occur, if this is true, is so vast, it's so amazing, it's almost hard to imagine.
What we're seeing now is multiple insider sources all telling us the same stuff, and these insider sources don't even know each other. They're totally disparate. And once you interpret, once you read the tea leaves of what they're saying, and then you actually apply that to the headlines and to what visible events are going on, now you have a view into what really is a shadow World War III. And in the simplest possible terms, you have now a majority of the U.S. military in conjunction with a majority of governments and militaries of other countries in the world. So it is an international alliance that is very actively working to defeat the cabal. And it's not going to be a coup because the leadership of this country is not going to change. But it's somewhat like a coup in the sense that aspects of the leadership in this country will change. And we can complain about this stuff online. We can say what's wrong and expose it and do what we're trying to do here. You're simply never going to get a vigilante mob of armed civilians who are going to ever be able to do anything significant to stop this thing. And anybody who tries to do that, because the cabal is so good at what it does, you're never even going to get the first assembly to happen because of the surveillance level. So in truth, the only way this could really happen is with the military. And I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is a lot of people are still fighting the Vietnam War.
Right.
And they're still listening to Hendrix, Janis Joplin, all these bands that were protesting. They're still living in that era. They're still extremely distrustful of the military. They're still even hating the military.
Still protesting. Yeah. Well, David, let me jump. We got to hit a break here in about 90 seconds. So let me ask you this, and we'll set up for where we're going to go when we come back. What changed for the military and the intelligence community for them to decide now to stand up and put up a fight against the cabal?
There's been a contingent of it that's been doing this since the 1950s, but I would say the biggest inciting incident that really mobilized the alliance was 9/11, where they began to realize that their oath of enlistment to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that they were being lied to and that their lives were being sacrificed for, you know, oily bankers. And that's something that they don't want to die for these people. They want to be heroes, and they want to do what's right, and they want to fight for freedom. And their oath says that that includes domestic enemies. And so they have really, it's been a remarkable revolutionary uprising, and even I'd say maybe in the last 6 months, a sizable number of the military that wasn't necessarily in the alliance before has now gone in. And there's multiple factions. I mean, there's at least 6 major factions in the U.S. military that are alliance factions now. And I don't know that much about them because all this stuff is still very secretive, but this is going to happen. And so everybody, you can laugh at me now, but come back later on after this has happened and listen to this show, and you'll be like, oh my God, there it was. David was talking about this before it happened.
Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here. Well, a lot of information has been, or there has been a lot of talk about martial law and his latest executive order, which I'm going to get into in a moment. And has he declared martial law? Are we under national emergency? What is going on? Well, this report is going to delve into all of that and more. But for starters, let me take you first and foremost to Infowars.com and a report they put out. And this one's titled, Donald Trump Declares a National Emergency and Financial Martial Law Against the Globalist. Now here's another report. This is on Alex Jones' YouTube channel, and it's Red Alert, Trump has declared martial law, MSM total blackout on development. Now he put that out on December 31st, and I wanted to show you both of those because the videos on those are very, very in-depth, and if you want a good analysis on that, I've got that below. But what I want to do in this report is let's go straight to the source and the executive order in which Alex Jones is referencing on that, so you guys kind of get the overall picture of what's really going on and who has what is really going on with Donald Trump and martial law and what that means for the average American citizen. Well, on whitehouse.gov, which is where you can get these executive orders, you can see on the screen that the executive order has been put out by President Trump just this week, and it's executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. Now, a little bit down in this executive order, here's what it states, and I'm going to read it verbatim so you have it verbatim. But it's this: I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside of the U.S., such as those committed or directed by persons listed and the annex to this order have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Human rights abuse and corruption undermine the value that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutes, degrade the rule of law, perpetuate violent conflicts, facilitate the activities of dangerous persons, tangible and significant consequences on those who commit serious human rights abuse or engage in that corruption, as well as to protect the financial system of the U.S. from abuse of these same persons. Now, he's referencing a certain group of people, in this case, human right lawbreakers, if you will. But he goes on to say, as a result of all of that, I therefore determine that serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the U.S. And I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. So there you have it. He has fully declared a national emergency. So you have it straight from whitehouse.gov. I'm going to leave a link below. Now, the question that we need to ask ourselves is there a difference between martial law and a national emergency? What constitutes what, and what does that mean? Are we going to see people on the streets? Well, no, we're not going to see men in guns. Martial law can be declared in certain facets and ways. And in this case, I agree with Alex Jones and believe that it has been declared on the globalists. Now, following that executive order came this proclamation, which I wanted to share with you also on whitehouse.gov, but the president has declared the month of January 2018 as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. All that to say that I think Donald Trump is definitely trying to make a statement against human trafficking. And let's be honest, we've had lots of things happen in the past, lots of human trafficking. We have Anthony Weiner, all the sex scandals from Hollywood, the sex scandals that we've heard about from high-up politicians. And to be honest, there are a lot of people who have come out of organizations like the Illuminati, like Skull and Crossbones, that have exposed the pedophile rings within the upper ranks of those in the government. And books have been written, many of which I have read, exposing the atrocities of people that will come to these parties where young children are involved. And now that some of these children are older, they're exposing some of these things, but they pay high dollar and have these pedo rings like Jeffrey Epstein, who has his own island, pedo island, label it as such. But these are some of the things that we're dealing with. And I believe that if we get to the heart of that problem, then a lot of people are going to be going down. A lot of the corruption that we're seeing is going to be falling away. I know there's a lot of talk on the Podestas and everything under the sun. So just wanted to kind of break all that down for you guys. I know a lot of you have been asking about that. What's going on? Has it been a real declaration? Obviously, we don't have people in the streets and we don't have military doing things. It's not at that level. When you say martial law, can take certain various forms, so you have to be careful with how you do that. But obviously he has declared a national emergency, but specifically in regards to the human rights trafficking. And I think that this is a way for Donald Trump to fight against the globalists. That's my personal take. That's what he's doing. He's not there to go against the American people. He says, we have to do this, otherwise they're going to attempt to take me out. As Q Anonymous and others have leaked, they have been attempting to take him out in some way, shape, or form. This Russian collusion narrative is falling apart. It's fake. And they don't have any evidence, and they know it, and now mainstream media is finally starting to have to admit it because they're looking like idiots. That's the truth. But I believe Donald Trump is doing this to save his presidency, to save what he has in office, and to attempt to save the American people from all of the junk that we've seen over the past few years, from all of this New World Order, United Nations, globalist-minded, and pedo ring kind of people that we're dealing with. So, and I've talked a lot about it over the years.
You can be a radiant light and transform the world with your love. And you can know in the greatest sense that indeed you are the light. You are the love. You are the one infinite creator now and forever. This cannot be threatened and it cannot be changed. And so it is. And now I'd like you to take a nice deep breath. Come back to your physical body. We went way into the ocean. Deep sea fishing, I call it. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. And now when you're ready, I'd like everybody to stand up. Audience participation exercise. You know, if you've been to my events, we do this. Whatever's appropriate, share the love. Give your neighbor a handshake or a hug. Don't keep it all locked up inside.